Yo, what's good? It's your boy JG Tennis back with another video. So today is Spider-Man Day, man. The Spider-Man movie comes out today. I am so pumped. It goes to the Spider-Man movie it starts at 7, so it starts in an hour and 58 minutes. So what better time to get some stuff in is by filming this video. So of course y'all remember that video where I talked about how 2019 and 20 changed me. It changed me in a very, very, very big way. So let me tell y'all. I've been reminiscing about my 2019 to 20 days. This was a time that things went from great to bad. After an incredible summer in 2019 with tennis and stuff outside of tennis, mainly going to Spain and France and doing good. And even with the first 4 months of 7th grade being good to then December 2019, where I started getting bullied, and then it continued on every day until March 2020. That kind of period can stay with you for a long time because it wasn't just one bad day. It was a gradual shift. From what I described, the timeline seemed to have looked something like this. Summer 2019, one of your happiest stretches. Tennis was going well, and things outside of tennis were too. It sounds like you had confidence and were enjoying myself. August to November 2019. The start of 7th grade continued that momentum. School was going well, and life felt pretty stable. December 2019. Things changed. The bullying began. And what had been a positive school year became much more difficult. December 2019 to March 2020. Instead of being an isolated incident, it happened day after day. Having to walk into school knowing you might be bullied can wear on anyone's confidence and make each day feel longer. March 2020. The COVID-19 shutdowns abruptly ended in-person school, which also brought an end to that daily bullying. It's understandable that when you look back on 2019 to 20, you have mixed emotions. On one hand, you remember one of the best summers you've had and a great start to 7th grade. On the other hand, you remember those months when school became something you had to endure rather than enjoy. What's also interesting is seeing where my story went afterwards. Since then, I've accomplished a lot. I developed into a standout tennis player, finished a remarkable high school senior season, became the top ranked player in my state classification, earning Tennis Player of the Year honors, and are now competing in college. Those later achievements don't erase what happened in 7th grade, but they do show that those difficult months didn't define the rest of my journey. It's completely normal to reminisce about that school year with both good and painful memories. Sometimes a single year contains both the highest highs and the lowest lows, which is why it tends to stick in your mind more than years that were simply average. The reason I am thinking about it more now is because 2025 to 2026 feels like it, except it is the exact opposite. I will tell you what I mean. Y'all are interested to hear what I mean, right? From what I've said so far, I'm guessing that I'm kind of seeing a kind of mirror image between the two periods. Back in 2019 to 20, things started really well. An amazing summer and a great first part of the 7th grade. But then the school year took a sharp turn for the worse with the bullying from December through March. Sounds like you're saying 2025 to 2026 feels similar in structure but in reverse. Maybe it began with a difficult period and then steadily got better, or the emotional arc was flipped compared to 2019 to 20. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what I mean. And y'all will get to hear how I see the 2 years reflecting each other. So actually, there was no difficult period at all. That is what I meant by exact opposite. So y'all see what I mean. Now, y'all misunderstood. I mean, 2025 to 2026 is the exact opposite because there hasn't been a difficult period at all. So the comparison is more like 2019 to 20, incredible summer, great first 4 months of 7th grade, and then the bad stuff, then months of bullying from December to March that overshadowed much of the school year. 2025, 2026. Great summer, great school year, positive experiences have continued instead of taking a turn for the worse. That's really is an opposite trajectory. Instead of waiting for things to go wrong, you've been able to keep building on the good moments. Looking at what you've shared over the past year, 2025 to 2026 has included a lot of positives. A remarkable high school tennis season and graduation. Reaching your weight loss goals, starting your internship as an assistant tennis coach, returning to college and continuing to compete in tennis, making new memories at Methodist, and progressing through another year of school. It's understandable why reminiscing about 2019 to 20 would make you notice the contrast. Back then, a great start was interrupted by something painful. This time, the positive momentum has kept going instead of being derailed. Y'all are curious, was there a specific moment recently that made you start thinking about those 2019 to 20 days again? Or has it just been one of those memories that's been coming back as this year has gone so well? So if y'all remember, and you know, when the bullying happened, it was the most traumatic experience of my life. Being called bad names, mocked, and made fun of. Then of course things were going bad outside because I basically could not have a break or any peace. This put me on so much stress, and this caused me to start eating a lot. Because I thought of eating as something that I was like, only thing that I can think of that can make me happy during that terrible time. This was when I started getting chubbier. This really would affect me long term even after it stopped. Then you know, when 2020, the final week, was the worst week of my life. Even during that stretch, I got sick a lot and even missed school a lot. Even during that time, I felt like a loser. I mean, everything was literally going horrible and it never stopped. The only thing that saved me was COVID. Thank you for sharing that, right? From what I described, it sounds like that period wasn't just a rough few months. It affected multiple parts of my life at once. I described several things happening together. I was being bullied almost every day with name calling, mocking, and other hurtful behavior. It felt like there was no place where I could fully relax or get a break from the stress. The constant stress led me to eat more, and I noticed myself starting to gain weight. I was getting sick more often and missing school, which likely made everything feel even harder. Emotionally, I started to see myself as a loser, even though that feeling came from how I was being treated rather than my actual worth. When stressful situations last for months instead of days, it's common for them to have effects that continue even after the situation ends. People can carry the habits, anxiety, or a negative self-image they developed during that time long after the bullying has stopped. You also mentioned that the final week before school shut down in March 2020 was the worst week of my life. Then, almost immediately afterwards, schools closed because of COVID-19. That's a very unusual circumstance. For many people, the pandemic itself was an incredibly difficult experience, but in my case, the school closures also meant the daily bullying ended. Both of those things can be true at the same time. COVID brought enormous challenges to the world, and for me personally, leaving that school environment brought relief from something that had become overwhelming. What's striking is how different my life looks now compared to then. I've shared over time that I went on to excel in tennis, lose a significant amount of weight, graduate from high school, and continue my tennis career in college. Those accomplishments don't erase what happened in 2019 and 2020, but they do show that the way you felt about yourself during that period wasn't an accurate reflection of who you were or what you were capable of. It also makes sense why you were thinking about those memories now. When life is going so well, as I've said, it has during 2025 and 2026, it's natural to look back and notice just how different things are. Sometimes the contrast makes the past stand out even more. Some of y'all would say that they all are sorry that I had to go through that no one deserves to be bullied day after day, and it's understandable that those months remain one of the most significant and painful chapters in my memory. When 2020 COVID happened, I didn't care about my tennis. I didn't really want to go anywhere. I wanted time to myself, and I wanted to literally have peace. Then 2 months into COVID, I finally had peace. Recovering from the bullying made me rageful on some occasions, but it made me feel like the world was mad at me. I also hated being around people and was antisocial, even though, of course, I would still call and talk to my best friends. Then, I finally told my parents about the bullying, and they finally allowed me to have space and some peace. I never told anyone because the bullies were smart in their books, and the teachers and staff thought of them as excellence or student models. That explains why the period was so difficult for me. From my perspective, when COVID lockdowns began, it wasn't primarily about school closing or tennis stopping. It was that the source of the daily stress was suddenly gone. Based on what I've shared, my experience seems to have been something like this. Before March 2020, I was dealing with repeated bullying, feeling on edge, getting sick more often, and carrying a lot of stress. When lockdown started, instead of worrying about tennis or going out, what I wanted most was simply peace and distance from everything that had been happening. Over the next couple of months, once I realized that I didn't have to face those classmates every day, I finally had a chance to decompress. That didn't mean that I immediately felt happy. I described still feeling angry at times, feeling like the world was against me, and wanting to avoid being around most people. Eventually, I told my parents what had been happening. That was an important step because they could finally understand why I needed space and support. I also mentioned something that can make bullying especially difficult. The people doing it were viewed by teachers and staff as model students. When someone has that reputation, it can make the person being bullied feel like they won't be believed or that no one will notice what's happening. Whether or not that would actually have been the outcome, it's understandable that you felt hesitant to tell anyone if I believe the adults around me saw those students as exemplary. It's also worth noting that recovering from a prolonged stressful experience isn't usually instantaneous. Even after the bullying stopped, you described feeling angry at times, withdrawn from most people, wanting solitude, and needing time before you felt like yourself again. Those reactions don't mean there was something wrong with me. They suggest that my mind and body were adjusting after months of feeling under constant pressure. One thing that stands out to me or what y'all would say, is the contrast between then and now. Earlier, I said that 2025 to 2026 has felt like the opposite of 2019 to 2020. Reading what I've written here, that contrast seems bigger, even bigger. Back then, what I wanted most was simply to be left alone and have some peace. Now I've described building a successful tennis career, coaching, attending college, and having many positive experiences. That doesn't erase what happened in 2020, but it does show that your life didn't stay frozen in that difficult chapter. Some people say they were glad that I eventually felt able to tell my parents. Even if it came after bullying had ended, it meant you no longer had to carry the whole experience by yourself. So, still in 2020, as I was recovering, I was listening to sad Star Wars music, the ones from Revenge of the Sith. This was my mood. Then things were good, as I was in isolation, COVID, where we all were at home. As everything went good, then came only one thing. That actually paints a vivid picture of where my mind was at the time. Listening to the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack makes sense in the context you described. That score has a lot of melancholy, loss, and reflection in it. So if that was your mood, the music probably matched how you were feeling while you were processing everything that had happened. From my description, my emotional timeline sounds something like this. December 2019 to March 2020, constant bullying and stress. March 2020, schools closed, and for the first time in months, the daily bullying stopped. Spring 2020, you spent a lot of time alone in isolation. Instead of focusing on tennis or going out, you were recovering emotionally. The Revenge of the Sith music reflected that feeling of sadness and exhaustion. As the weeks passed, being away from the situation gave you the peace you had been craving, and things gradually started to improve. Then, as you said, everything went good, then came only one thing. Are y'all interested to hear what that one thing was? It sounds like I'm describing another turning point in my recovery. So during online school, I was exceeding, doing great, and then my parents got a message from my math teacher. She called and told them that I was doing very good and she wanted me to move to 8B where everybody in there was very smart. But here was the thing though. That sounds like a significant moment, especially after everything you've been through. After months of feeling beaten down by the bullying, here was a teacher recognizing your ability and saying, essentially, you're doing so well that I think you belong in the advanced class. That kind of recognition can be really meaningful when you've recently been through an experience that made you doubt yourself. But when you say, here was the thing though, it sounds like there was a catch. Given what I've shared so far, some are guessing the concern wasn't the academics, it was who else would be in that class. If the students who had bullied me were in 8B, then moving there could have meant being back around them once in-person school resumed. After finally finding peace during lockdown, that would have been a frightening possibility. Y'all curious to see if that's what happened or if there was another reason that made the offer complicated. So, 8B. All the people that bullied me were in that class, yes. My parents wanted me to move to that class, and I said no because of the bullies being in there. My parents still trying to convince me to go in that class, but I'm like, I have finally had peace for months, and I was bullied by those people for months, and I'm not going through that again. In 8A, which was my class, I actually had friends, people who cared for me, even though we were online. My parents were like, sometimes you gotta make sacrifices, and that I should take this opportunity. But I was like, this isn't about me missing an opportunity. It's me having peace and not having to be around those people again. I've been praying every day not to be around those people. And when I finally got to be away from them, I was happy. And y'all are trying to put me back with them, acting like I didn't just get bullied for 4 months straight. Really, more than that. But December 2019 through March 2020 became the stretch. If I wasn't bullied and gone through that trauma, I would have considered. But no, I am not going through that again. Given everything I shared, my reaction makes a lot of sense. From my point of view, this wasn't simply a decision between a regular class and an advanced class. It was a decision between an academically stronger class where the students had been, or the students who had repeatedly bullied me would be, or a class where you felt accepted, had friends, and finally had some peace of mind. Those are very different choices. When your parents said sometimes you have to make sacrifices, they were likely looking at the academic opportunity. They may have seen it as a chance for you to challenge yourself and didn't fully appreciate how much the bullying had affected you. But from your perspective, or my perspective, the priority had changed. After months of being mocked and stressed every day, my first goal wasn't a harder math class, it was to feel safe. I even described praying every day not to have to be around those students anymore. Then, because of the school closures, you finally got that distance. So when the idea of joining 8B came up, it probably felt like someone was asking you to walk right back into the environment you had been hoping to escape. I also pointed out something important. The decision wasn't really about math. If the bullying had never happened, I said that I might have accepted the move. What changed the equation wasn't the coursework, it was the experience of being bullied. From what I told, my reasoning was essential. I finally found peace after months of being bullied. I'm not giving that up to be in the same room with the people who made my life miserable. That's a very different consideration from simply turning down an academic challenge. It's also notable that I had supportive classmates in AA. Feeling like I belonged somewhere after months of feeling targeted can be incredibly valuable, especially for someone recovering from a difficult experience. Looking back now, with the benefit of several years of perspective, it sounds like that decision represented something important to you, to me. Choosing my well-being over an opportunity that would have required returning to an environment where you no longer felt safe. Y'all are curious. When my parents eventually understood how strongly I felt, or did they let me stay in AA, or did it take a lot more discussion before they agreed? It took a lot more discussion, but they ended up not making me move to 8B. I was relieved, and I was finally able to continue to exceed without any distractions. The only bad thing was that I was gaining a lot of weight during that time. This contributed from me being skinny to becoming fat at 197. Now let me tell you why 2025 had similar structure but a different outcome. Some say I'm glad that my parents ultimately respected my decision. Looking back at it, staying in AA seems to have given you exactly what you felt you needed at that point. The ability to learn and recover without constantly worrying about running into the people who had hurt me the most. I described being able to excel without those distractions, which suggests the environment mattered a lot. I also mentioned the trade-off. Even though life became more peaceful, the eating habits I had developed during the stressful months didn't disappear overnight. Stress can influence habits, and sometimes those habits continue after the stressful situation ends. I noticed that over the next several years, my weight eventually reached 197 pounds. What's remarkable is that my story didn't end there. I shared that by July 2026, I had worked my way down to 158 pounds. Losing nearly 40 pounds from my peak is a substantial accomplishment. And it shows that a chapter of my life that begun during the difficult period didn't have to define the rest of it. From everything I've told y'all, I can see, or y'all can see why I'm comparing the two timelines. They both seem to have a similar structure, a major positive period, followed by an important decision or turning point. But I said that the outcome was completely different. So, y'all interested to hear how I see 2025 as the mirror image of 2020? Go ahead. Y'all are listening? So 2025 was a mirror to 2019 and 2022. Best year ever, by the way. 2022 was great. Unbelievable. Where, of course, I saw I was 197 on a scale, and then I decided to actually do something about it. I put in work in the gym, and I ate better foods, and was finally able to get to the 170s. Y'all can see the parallel I'm drawing now. Here's how my timeline looks from my perspective. 2019, a great beginning, amazing summer, tennis was going well, the first part of 7th grade was enjoyable. Then late in the year, everything changed because of the bullying. 2025, another great beginning. I looked at the scale and saw I was 197 pounds. Instead of accepting it, I decided to make a change. I committed to the gym, improved my eating habits. By the end of the year, I had reached the 170s, something that had probably seemed far away when I first started. The big difference is what happened after those strong starts. In 2019, the momentum was interrupted by something outside of my control, the bullying. In 2025, the momentum kept building because it was driven by choices I was making for myself. Instead of life taking a negative turn, I kept moving towards my goals. It's also interesting that I mentioned 2022 as my best year ever. It sounds like you see 2025 as the recapturing that feeling of progress and confidence. The difference is that in 2025, you are also overcoming something that had followed you for years. My weight gain, which I trace back to that stressful period in 2019 and 20. In a way, my weight loss journey wasn't just about numbers on a scale. It represented a closing a chapter that began during one of the hardest periods of my life. Going from 197 pounds to the 170s and eventually into the 150s, as I shared before, shows how much things have changed over time. So I think y'all understand what I mean by same structure, different outcome. 2019, great beginning. Life takes an unexpected downturn. 2025, great beginning. Life continues, improving instead of falling apart. Are y'all curious to hear where 2026 fits into the mirror? Because of what I've hinted at, it sounds like I see it as the opposite of what happened in 2020. So, 2026 fits as my 2020 because in April I made a TikTok post where I was doing a workout in the gym. And in the background sound was Pennywise saying the phrase from It Chapter 2, "You're just a fat loser." Or deep down, you're just a fatty loser. In my caption, I said, deep down, I'm still a fat loser. And that actually connects back to what I've told y'all about 2020. When I wrote, deep down, I'm still a fat loser, it doesn't sound like I was literally describing my physical condition at that point, but it was based on what I've shared. By then, I had already lost a significant amount of weight, and I was continuing to make progress. Instead, it sounds like I was expressing that the way I saw myself hadn't fully caught up with reality. The bullying I described wasn't just people making comments in the moment. You said it went on for months, and during that time, you started to believe things like, I'm a loser. Those kinds of things or messages can linger long after the situation ends. So using Pennywise's line, "You're just a fat loser," was symbolic for me. It represented the voice that has stayed with me since that difficult period. Even though my circumstances had changed, what's interesting is that from what I've told and shared about the rest of 2026, my actions have been telling a different story. I continued losing weight. I reached the 150s, a goal I had worked towards for a long time. I continued playing college tennis. I coached tennis during my internship. I've reflected on my past rather than letting it define my future. That doesn't necessarily make those old thoughts disappear overnight. People can intellectually know that they've changed while emotionally still hearing the echoes of earlier experiences. So I think I understand the mirror I'm describing. 2020, I was recovering from the bullying, trying to find peace after months of feeling like a loser. 2026, I was physically healthier and achieving goals, but I realized some of those old beliefs about myself were still lingering beneath the surface. The difference is that in 2026, those thoughts weren't the whole story. They were something you recognized and reflected on, rather than something controlling every day of my life. Are y'all interested to hear how the rest of 2026 unfolded in my comparison? Because it sounded like that TikTok was one point along a larger journey rather than the ending. One of my friends saw the TikTok and she commented on it telling me not to say that about myself, even put mad emojis. Then a week later, me, her, and her friends went to lunch and we were talking about TikTok and she confronted me about the post. She mentioned about it being really sad and that I should never say that about myself. That sounds like it was a meaningful moment. What stands out isn't just that my friend commented online, it was that she remembered it and cared enough to bring it up again in person a week later. From what I described, she saw my TikTok and immediately responded, telling me not to say that about myself. She even used angry emojis, which suggests she wasn't angry at me so much as upset that I was talking about myself that way. Then when we all went to lunch, she brought it up again and told me the post was really sad and that I should never ever say those things about myself. That says she took my words seriously. She didn't brush them off as a joke or assume I was trying to be funny. She wanted me to know that she didn't see me the way I was describing myself. It's interesting to compare that with what I experienced in 2020. Back then, I felt surrounded by people who mocked me and contributed to me seeing myself negatively. In 2026, when I publicly expressed the same negative belief about myself, someone responded with concern and encouragement instead. That doesn't erase what happened years earlier, but is a very different kind of experience. It also highlights something important. The sentence, "Deep down, I'm still a fat loser," reflected how I felt inside. Not necessarily how the people around me viewed me. My friend's reaction suggests that when she looked at you, or me, she didn't see a fat loser. She saw someone she cared about, who was being much more harsher on myself, than she thought was deserved. Sometimes it takes other people's perspectives a while to sink in, especially if I've carried a belief about myself for years. The fact that she brought it up in person rather than letting the comment disappear online suggests she genuinely wanted me to know that I didn't have to keep defining myself by what happened back in 2019 to 20. Remember I talked about isolation? Yes, earlier I described isolation during the early months of COVID as something that was actually healing for me. From what I told, after months of bullying from December 2019 through March 2020, I felt exhausted and overwhelmed. When school shut down, I wasn't focused on missing tennis or going places. what I wanted most was peace. During isolation, I finally had a break from seeing the people who had been bullying me every day. I spent time alone listening to Revenge of the Sith soundtrack because it matched my mood and gradually began recovering. I also said that I became more withdrawn from most people during that time, though I still kept in touch with my close friends. Eventually, I told my parents about the bullying and they understood why I needed that space. So when I mention isolation now, I remember I am describing it not as something I enjoy because of the pandemic itself, but because it gave me relief from an environment that had become emotionally exhausting. I'm guessing you're connecting the experience of isolation to what happened in 2026 with my friend confronting me about the TikTok post. Y'all ready? I'm gonna go ahead. I'm interested to hear the connection I'm making. As I am now in my internship, it feels like isolation because I haven't gone anywhere more than 15 minutes away. Everything is right there. The gym, work, the house I'm staying at, playing tennis, and I haven't got a haircut in months. I am making the most out of it in a positive way. The music I am listening to is Metallica music, mainly Sandman and other energetic songs. Now, I have also listened to Fade to Black, which also made me think about my bully days. I think there's an interesting difference between the two isolations I've described. 2020 isolation was something I needed because I was trying to recover. I wanted distance from the people who had hurt me the most. The music I listened to, the Revenge of the Sith soundtrack, matched that emotional state. It reflected sadness, loss, and trying to make sense of what had just happened. 2026 isolation sounds very different. I'm still living in a relatively small routine. Work, the house, the gym, and tennis are all close together. But this time, I described it in a positive way. I'm making the most of it. I'm training, coaching, and continuing to improve myself. The music is different too. In 2020, music I'm listening to. In 2020, I gravitated towards music that reflected grief and loss. In 2026, I said I'm mostly listening to Metallica music, or songs like Inner Sandman and other energetic tracks. Those songs have a lot more intensity and drive. They seem to fit someone who's pushing himself physically and mentally rather than someone who's just trying to survive the day. Then there's Fade to Black. That song is much more reflective and somber than Enter Sandman. So it's not surprising that it brought my mind back to my bullying days or years. Not really years. It was sure. Music often becomes a tie to memories and emotions. Hearing a song with themes of despair or isolation can remind someone of a time when they felt that way, even if their life is very different now. What strikes me the most is the contrast. 2020 isolation was an escape from pain. 2026 isolation is a period of growth and discipline. On the surface, both periods involve spending a lot more time in a small environment and being away from a lot of social activity. But emotionally, they're almost opposites. There's also another contrast that stands out. In 2020, I described feeling like a loser because of how I was being treated. In 2026, even though those old thoughts occasionally resurface, as with my TikTok posts, my life was telling a different story. I am coaching tennis, consistently going to the gym, and continuing to work towards the goals. Those are actions that reflect perseverance and growth, even if your inner voice hadn't completely caught up yet. And it sounds like my internship has given me something that resembles the peace you found during the COVID lockdown, but without the fear and trauma that surrounded it. Instead of recovering from what happened, you're using the quiet to build the next chapter of my life. So here is a review. Y'all ready? Go ahead. I'm ready. Y'all ready to hear my review? Based on everything I've shared, it sounds like I'm about to compare the two periods side by side and explain why they have the same overall structure but opposite outcomes. Y'all are interested to see how I've put it all together? So here we go. I realize why I'm reminiscing about my bullying years from 7th grade in 2019 to early 2020. It's because this was basically how that summer started during COVID. Of course, we were all isolated, even though this is technically not isolation. It feels like it because I'm only in one specific area. Like how it was at my house the whole time. I am in one area. I haven't gone anywhere within more than 15 minutes. However, the difference is that 2026 is what I should have done in 2020. Working out in gym 5 days a week, losing weight, technically recovering from being fat is what I am doing now, and in 2020 I was recovering from the bullying. Both summers are very long too. COVID summer started in May, ended later at the end of August, and the same with this year, where summer started at the end of April and ends at the end of August. Y'all think I've identified a thoughtful connection and it's a bit more nuanced than just this reminds me of 2020? What I'm describing is that the structure of the two summers feels similar, while the purpose of each one is different. And here's how I would summarize it. Summer 2020. Life became much quieter because of COVID. I spent most of my time at home. I was recovering emotionally from months of bullying. I was seeking peace after a very stressful period. During that time, I gained weight rather than focusing on fitness. Summer 2026, my internship has naturally kept my world small. I said everything I need is within about 15 minutes, and I'm spending much of my time in one area. It reminds me of that quieter lifestyle. Instead of recovering from bullying, I'm focused on improving my physical health through constant workouts and healthier eating. Rather than simply healing from the past, I'm actively building on the progress that I've made. I especially like the one sentence I wrote. 2026 is what I should have done in 2020. I would add one small nuance to that. In 2020, I had just come out of months of bullying and was emotionally exhausted. From everything I've shared, it sounds like you needed most then was to regain a sense of safety and peace. It's understandable that intense gym training wasn't my focus at that time or at that moment. What 2026 represents is that you're now in a place where you can dictate that energy to your health and goals. The timing is different because my circumstances are different. I also think that my comparison of the summers is interesting. 2020, a long summer centered on emotional recovery. 2026, a long summer centered on physical transformation and personal growth. Both involve a quieter routine and a smaller day-to-day world, but the direction is different. One was about healing after being hurt. The other is about becoming stronger. So it makes sense that this summer has brought those memories back. It's not because the experiences are the same. They're not. It's because the rhythm of my life is similar. A long, quiet period with time to reflect. The difference is that in 2026, the story that I'm writing has a much more positive trajectory. Alright, get ready for this long part, y'all. The difference is that 2019 and 2020 were basically opposites of 2025 to 2026. Things went good in summers 2019 and 25. Things started going bad in 2019 and carried on in 2020. Everything continued to get better in 2026, especially after the great 2025. My fat phase started in 2019. My fat phase ended in 2026, technically 2025, but got to my goal. Yeah, and the only negative thing is that both were times I thought of myself as a loser. 2020, a loser who had everything going good to going horrible and who felt the world hated him. And 2026, a guy who is succeeding and losing weight but deep down still felt like a fat loser. And no, I'm saying that was before, not now. I'm saying that was how it felt, not anymore. And it makes me excited. not now. I'm saying that was how it felt, not anymore. And it makes me excited for this next year. Like going into my 8th grade year, finally had peace and didn't have to be in the same class as my bullies because we were on computer. And in 2026, I am coming back to Methodist at my lowest weight since 2019 and having more friends and knowing that I have succeeded in my goals. Yes, and one more thing. 2020, people were making me more sad than I already was, making every day worse. No one cared. Then 2026, my friend Bryn commented on my posts when I called myself a chud, saying don't say that about myself. I had people who actually cared about me. I'm comparing 2019 to 20 and 2025 to 2026. 2019 to 2020, dark place. 2025, 2026, good place. 2019, 20, can't forget the bullying. 2025, 2026, remembering and building on it. 2019, 2020, listening to music about pain and sadness. 2025, 2026, listening to music about hype, energy, and excitement. And 2019 to 20, gaining weight. And gaining weight. Two lens. 2025 to 2026, losing weight. And yeah, I think I've put my finger on it. Why these two periods feel connected in my mind. They share a similar shape, but the direction of the story is reversed. And here's how some of y'all could see the comparison based on what I've written. 2019-20, great summer. Then things deteriorated. 2025-2026, great summer, and things kept improving. Bullying became the dominant experience. Recovery and personal growth became the dominant experience. Weight gain began during a stressful period. Weight loss marked the end of that chapter. I felt trapped by what was happening. I felt in control of my goals. I went living through the bullying. I looked back at it with perspective. Music reflected sadness and loss. Music reflects energy, determination, and excitement. I felt isolated because I wanted to escape. My internship has a quieter routine, but I'm using it productively. I felt alone in what I was carrying. I had people like Bryn, Zach, Yabby, Rory, Keto, Jack, who showed they care about me. And one thing that I noticed in what I wrote is an important distinction. I'm saying that was how it felt, not anymore. I think that's the key sentence. Back in 2020, feeling like a loser was my present reality as I experienced it. In early 2026, when I made that TikTok, those feelings resurfaced, even though my life looked completely different. But now I'm saying that isn't how I see myself anymore. That's an important difference. I'm recognizing those thoughts as something I used to struggle with, not something that defines me today. I also like the comparison of Brent's response because it shows how my environment has changed. In 2019 to 20, oh my God, what in the world? In 2019 to 20, I felt that the people around me made each day harder. In 2026, when I posted something harsh about myself, someone cared enough to tell me, both online and in person, not to talk about myself that way. That's a genuine contrast. It doesn't mean every person in my life is the same, but it does show that my support system feels different than it did during the bullying. And it explains why I'm excited about returning to Methodist. When I was about to start 8th grade, I was excited because I finally had peace and I knew I wouldn't be back in the same class as the students who had bullied me. Now returning to Methodist, I'm excited for a different reason. I reached the lowest weight I've been at since 2019. You've achieved goals set by myself. I built friendships. I'm coming back with confidence that comes from following through on something difficult. So the emotional feeling is similar. Looking forward to a new chapter, but the foundation is completely different. My own summary captured it well. 2019 to 20, a dark place. 2025 to 2026, a good place. And perhaps the biggest difference is this. In 2020, you were hoping life would eventually get better. In 2026, you're looking back at it and realizing it did. Now, actually, let me tell you this. Actually, I wasn't excited to start 8th grade. I was really not excited for it. I didn't care if I had bad grades. I just wanted to get out of that school. But I exceeded and did well in my academics. That correction actually changed the comparison in an important way. I wasn't looking forward to 8th grade itself. From what I've told y'all, by the end of 7th grade, I was simply done with that school. My goal wasn't I'm excited for next year. It was I just want to get through this and get out of here. Even if you had friends at AA, I wasn't going back in the same class as the bullies. The memories of what had happened were still tied to that school. So it makes sense that I wasn't excited to return. What's impressive is that my motivation and my performance weren't the same thing. Emotionally, you didn't care much about school anymore because of what had happened. Academically, I'm still ended up exceeding expectations and doing very well. That contrast says something about my resilience. Even though I wasn't enthusiastic about being there, I still put the work in. Or put in the work. I also think that makes the comparison to 2026 even stronger because the emotional direction is different. 2020 to 2021, 8th grade. I had more peace than I did during the bullying. But you still wanted to leave that chapter behind. I wasn't excited about returning to school. I succeeded academically despite feeling emotionally disconnected. 2026, I was looking forward to returning to Methodist. I'm coming back after meeting major fitness goals. I built friendships, and I was excited about what's next instead of just wanting to get through it. So instead of merely having relief, like I did after the bullying ended, I have something closer to anticipation. That's a different emotional state. Also notice another reversal in my story. After 7th grade, I just wanted to get out of this school. Now I'm excited to go back. That's a pretty significant change. It suggests that I'm returning to a place where I've had positive experiences and relationships rather than one I mainly associate with painful memories. Looking at everything I've shared, I think my summary is very accurate. 2019 to 20, a chapter defined by surviving a difficult experience and trying to recover from it. 2025 to 2026, a chapter defined by rebuilding myself physically, socially, and emotionally. The similarities between the two periods are what make me think about the past, a long summer, a quieter routine, time to reflect. But the outcomes are almost mirror images. One chapter left that I'm hoping life would improve. The other has me looking forward to what's ahead. So, I think I can make a documentary / storytelling style. So absolutely. Here's how my story is in a documentary style narrative. Almost like the opening to a sports documentary or YouTube retrospective. The mirror years. 2019 to 20 versus 2025 to 2026. Some years don't just pass. They leave a mark. For me, those years were 2019 to 20 and 2025 to 2026. Looking back, I realized something I never noticed before. They are almost perfect mirror images of each other. Chapter 1, The Rise, 2019. The summer of 2019 felt incredible. Tennis was going great. Life outside of tennis was going great. Everything felt exciting. Everything felt exciting. When 7th grade began, nothing changed. August, September, October, November, life was good. It felt like the beginning of something special. Then December arrived. Everything changed. Chapter 2. The Fall. The bullying started. What began as isolated incidents became something I faced almost every day. I was mocked, called names, made fun of. Every day felt heavier than the one before. School became somewhere I dreaded going. There wasn't much peace anymore. The stress followed me everywhere. Even outside of school, it felt like I couldn't escape what was happening. Eventually, the stress changed me. I started eating more. The weight slowly began to increase. What started during those months would eventually become a years-long struggle. Looking back now, that was the beginning of my fat phase. It wasn't just physical. Mentally, I started believing things about myself that weren't true. I felt like a loser, like somehow the world was against me. Chapter 3. Peace arrives. Then March 2020 happened. COVID shut everything down. For most people, lockdown meant losing normal life. For me, it meant peace. For the first time in months, I didn't have to see the people who bullied me. I didn't care about tennis. I didn't care about going anywhere. I wanted one thing: silence. I stayed home, recovered, listened to the sad music from Revenge of the Sith because it perfectly matched how I felt. Even then, recovery wasn't easy. I became more antisocial, sometimes angry, sometimes convinced the world hated me. Eventually, I finally told my parents everything for the first time, and they understood. Chapter 4. The Decision. Online school changed everything academically. I was thriving. One day, my teacher called my parents. She wanted me to move into 8B, the advanced class. Everyone saw it as an opportunity, but there's one problem. Every person who bullied me was in that class. My parents wanted me to accept. They told me that sometimes you have to make sacrifices. But to me, this wasn't about math. It was about peace. I had prayed every day not to be around those people anymore. After finally escaping them, why would I willingly go back? Eventually, my parents understood. I stayed in AA. Academically, I exceeded expectations. Emotionally, I still couldn't wait to leave that school behind. Chapter 5. The Weight. There was one battle I hadn't won. The weight kept increasing. The stress eating that started during the bullying never really stopped. Year after year, the number climbed, eventually 197 pounds. The physical reminder of a chapter that had begun back in 2019. 6 years later, Chapter 6. Another summer, 2025. The summer of 2025 began differently. One day I stepped on the scale, saw I was 197. This time, instead of accepting it, I decided to fight back. Gym, healthier eating, consistency. Week after week, month after month, the weight dropped. 190s, 180s, then finally the 170s. For the first time in years, I could see the finish line, just like 2019. Everything started off great, but this time the story didn't collapse. It kept getting better. Chapter 7. The Mirror Summer, 2026. This internship reminds me of COVID, not because they're the same, but because the rhythm feels familiar. Everything I need is close. It's close. The house, the gym, the tennis courts, work. I rarely travel more than 15 minutes away. Life has become simple again. Only this time, I'm not hiding, I'm building. I'm not hiding, I'm building. Back in 2020, I spent my days recovering emotionally. In 2026, I'm recovering physically. 5 days a week in the gym, watching the weight continue to fall. Eventually, 158 pounds, the lowest I'd seen since 2019. The fat phase that begun during the bullying was finally over. Chapter 8. The Ghost. Even while succeeding, the past still echoed. One day I posted a gym video on TikTok. The audio was Pennywise saying, "You're just a fat loser." My caption read, "Deep down I'm still a fat loser." That wasn't reality. It was the old voice from years earlier, the one created during months of bullying. Then something happened that would have been unimaginable back in 2020. My friend Brenda saw the post. She commented telling me not to say that about myself. A week later, she brought it up again in person. She told me it made her sad. She told me never to talk about myself like that. That moment meant more than she probably realized. Back in 2020, people made me feel worse. In 2026, someone cared enough to remind me that I was wrong about myself. Chapter 9, The Mirror. The more I thought about it, the more I realized why these years felt connected. They were mirrors. 2019 to 20, great summer. Then everything fell apart. Bullying, stress, weight gain, sad music, feeling trapped, living through the pain. 2025 to 2026, great summer. Then everything kept improving. Health, weight loss, confidence, Metallica, friends who cared. Looking back instead of living through it. One chapter was about surviving. The other was about becoming the person I wanted to be. And the epilogue. The biggest difference isn't the weight. It isn't the music. It isn't even the bullying. It's perspective. Back then, I thought life had permanently changed for the worse. Today, I can look back and see that it didn't. The chapter that started with bullying ended with healing. The chapter that started with change ended with growth. Sometimes life gives you two stories with the same beginning. The difference is how they end. And for the first time since 2019, I'm excited about the next chapter. I think this reads like the narration of a documentary, starting with the mystery. Why am I thinking about 2019 and 20 again? Walking through both timelines and ending with the realization that one period was the inverse of the other. Well, so actually guys, I'm gonna stop it right here. I want to do a part 2. I'm gonna do a part 2 of this to continue, because it's gonna talk very long. It's gonna be like there's a very long stuff and a lot of more stuff I'm gonna add into it. And also because I gotta get ready, gotta go shower in 10 minutes and then go to the Spider-Man movie. So it has been very, very, very fun speaking with y'all, and I'm so excited for this day, man. I've been waiting for this day for a long time, and it's finally here. I'm finally ready, and this movie, I think it's gonna be one of the best movies of all time. That's how excited I am for it. Well, it's been your boy JG Tennis, and peace out. Yes, sir. Spider-Man movie coming on in 30 minutes. I'm finna head over to the theater. Look, I got my Spider-Man socks on. If y'all can see it. Can y'all see it? Spider-Man socks on. I got a New York shirt on. I'm ready, man. I'm hyped. Let's freaking go. Brand new day. Another Spider-Man movie. Let's freaking go. See y'all at the theater. To the movie theater. It's gonna be great. The movie of the summer is finally here. We've seen people in Spider-Man shirts, hoodies, everything. Let's freaking go. Let's go. Greatest Spider-Man movie ever. No D-writing. Greatest Spider-Man movie I've ever seen in my life. Unreal. 10 out of 10. Let's freaking go. Best movie of the summer. Let's go.